The Christmas story. In a small town called Nazareth, there lived a girl whose name was Mary.
Okay.
She sat down in a chair in the middle of the room.
Okay. Maybe you did.
The house she lived in had a flat roof with stone steps leading up to it. Sometimes Mary would climb up on the roof and look down at the children playing. Mary loved children. When Mary was old enough to marry, she was going to marry a good man called Joseph. He was a carpenter. One day, as Mary was busy at home, the room filled with a bright light. An angel stood before her. Two angels stood before her and said, I'll say it for you. Two angels stood next to her.
Next to.
Next to.
And said, Hail Mary, you are full of grace. The Lord is with you. Mary was trembling. But the angel said, Do not be afraid. God wants to send you a baby son. When he is born, you are to call him Jesus. And Mary smiled. If that is what God wants, then I am happy, she said. Now the emperor commanded that all the men in the land should go to town where they had been born. There they had to sign a special book so that the kings would know how many people lived in this part of his empire. Did the angels stay there?
I don't know, I think they come back.
Okay. Usually the angels stayed by baby Jesus. Joseph had been born in a little town called Bethlehem. It was a long way from Nazareth. He had to walk all the way. Mary went, too, riding beside her husband on a donkey. Mary was very tired when at last they arrived in Bethlehem. She knew that it was nearly time for her baby to be born. She hoped that they could find a place to rest, but everywhere was full. There was no room in any of the inns. At the last place they tried, the innkeeper saw how tired Mary looked. I have no room to spare in my inn, he said. But if you like, you can stay in the stable. Mary and Joseph thanked him. A stable was better than nothing. The stable was warm and quiet, and there was plenty of clean straw. Mary and Joseph had to share it with some oxen. The animals stared curiously and watched the little donkey eating hay for its supper. Joseph unpacked the food and clothes they had brought. Then he made a soft bed of straw for Mary to lie on. That night, Mary's baby was born. It was a boy, and they named him Jesus, just as the angel had said they must. Mary wrapped the baby Jesus in warm shawls. There was no cot for him to lie in, but there was a manger. The manger was a little wooden box. The innkeeper filled it with hay for his animals to eat. So Joseph put some fresh straw in the manger to make a soft bed for the baby Jesus. In the fields nearby, some shepherds were singing by a big fire, having a sip of coffee. They were staying awake to make sure that their sheep came to no harm. The fire kept them warm, and the wild animals stayed well away from the flames. As the shepherds sat by their fire, an angel came to them. Two angels came to them. I have good news for you, he said. You must share it with all the men and women, and the children too, who are God's friends. Tell them that the baby Jesus has been born. He is Christ your Lord. You will find him in Bethlehem, in a stable, lying in a manger. Suddenly the sky was filled with light, and a great choir of angels began to sing. Glory be to God, and peace to all who are God's friends. After the angels had gone, the shepherds hurried away to Bethlehem, where they found the stable. The shepherds tiptoed in and looked at the baby lying in his manger. They told Mary and Joseph what the angels had said about Jesus. Mary listened in wonder. She understood that one day Jesus would do special work for God. When the shepherds had said goodbye to Jesus, they went outside and whooped for joy. On the way home, they sang and shouted, telling everyone everyone they met about the baby Jesus, they thanked God for sending him to them. In a land far away in the east, 3 wise men
Man.
And women.
had seen a bright, and one woman, had seen a bright new star in
One
the
wise
sky.
woman.
Because of their great learning, they knew that it was the star of the newborn king. The star began to move across the sky, and the wise men decided to follow it. They hoped that it would lead them to the baby king. What?
Careful, Joseph, you're gonna overdo it.
Perfect. The journey of the wise men was long and difficult. Even their camels grew tired. Okay. But at last they reached Bethlehem, and there the star came to rest over the place where Jesus lay. The wise men were full of joy as they hurried into Jesus. When they saw him lying in his mother's arms, they fell to their knees before him.
Close your knees.
Each of them had brought a special gift for the newborn king. One had brought gold, because Jesus was a king. One had brought frankincense, a sweet-smelling incense, because it showed that it was God.
There you
There you
go.
One had brought bitter myrrh, because one day Jesus would suffer and die. When the wise men had given their gifts to Jesus, they began their long journey back to their homelands. Mary and Joseph left Bethlehem too. But instead of going straight home to Nazareth, they took baby Jesus to the great temple in Jerusalem. They did this to show that their son belonged to God. At last, Mary and Joseph went home to Nazareth with their baby. Jesus grew up wise and strong, a boy loved by God and by everyone who knew him.